Today we begin a new season here in the Collector's Cut, and it's certainly a little different because it's time for dance movie season. So join us as two 30-something men talk about watching Dirty Dancing for the first time. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, that is David, and this is the start of a new season. David's got a quote ready, I'll let him say his quote.
Well, because of the way you phrased it, now it doesn't work.
Welcome everyone, David's here.
Hi, it's me. David, that's a real grown-up name. I'm sorry, I flubbed this one. Here's the thing, people. It's a new season, and I really want to be here for it. Like, I absolutely do, especially because this is one that Peter's going to 100% blame me for the entire time.
Yes.
But for this specific recording, I am sick. I have a little bit of like a throat thing going on.
Do you know what this is, David? This is karma, you little shit. That's what that is, because David, for some reason, had the idea, let's do a dance movie season. And then he had people on stream on Twitch bully me into it. And here we are.
Hold on. I believe we paid for this. I believe I sunk money into making this happen.
Okay, there was some financial gain. Sure. But come on now. Come on. We're here to do an 8-episode dance movie season, which I'm convinced none of our regular audience are going to care about. But we're here to do it anyway, because... just cause. So, here we are. So look, we begin.
These are some of the most classic movies of the 80s. At least like 3 or maybe 4 of them are. So, I think that's enough to say it's worth it.
Shut up and feel bad. We're here to talk about Dirty Dancing. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. I'll just remind you, if you are enjoying the show, please do hit the like button. And it helps out a bunch if you do that. And of course, there's bonus shows that me and David do monthly over on Patreon. I'll tell you more about those at the end. But we'll get into it. I'd never seen Dirty Dancing before. David, I'm curious. Had you seen it?
I actually hadn't. There's of course a few like super famous scenes in this. I saw, I think, the most famous scene, which is the ending of this movie before. But beyond that.
There was a couple of clips that when they got to that part in the movie, I went, I've seen a clip of this at some point for whatever reason. But yeah, I'd never seen it all the way through, certainly. I vaguely knew it was about like a summer, like holiday place, and that's where this romance happens. I actually had no idea it was a period piece. It's set in the early 60s.
Yeah, neither did I. That one surprised me. Yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because there were so many 80s movies coming out at that point where they were just like, let's wind back the clock to the late 50s, early 60s and just have fun with that.
I think it's partly that. I think it's also because it fits with the idea that this place does all this old-fashioned dancing and that the more, the dirty dancing, if you will, is this flashy new thing. That wouldn't make sense in the 80s because it's the 80s. They're already doing all this everywhere.
There's all your flash dances and your foot looses and your...
Stop spoiling future episodes, you pain.
What? I feel like it's pretty obvious that those would be in a dance season, but I didn't even say that we were doing them. That's on you now.
Well, I thought I'd make a sly little tease, okay? Okay.
Gotcha.
Basic premise of this is that a 17-year-old, keep that in mind, is with her family, her sister and her parents, going to this vacation home or resort.
It's like a manor estate sort of thing.
Yeah, they have like entertainment. They go there for 3 weeks. And there's a bunch of fancy dancing instructors, namely, of course, Johnny Castle, which is such a movie name, played by Patrick Swayze. And through a series of circumstances, which we'll get into more in spoilers, she ends up having to sub in for a professional dancer. So we get a lot of like training and a romance blossoms, and things go from there. There's a lot of like class based like sort of commentary going on as well and things like that, but we'll delve deeper as we go. But that's the basic gist of it, and we'll dive in. All right, David, what did you think of Dirty Dancing?
Wouldn't it just be great if I just opened up this with God, I hated it and I regret this entire season already? But no,
I can't decide if that would be something that would amuse me or make me want to strangle you. I'm actually conflicted to be honest.
Yeah, it would be amusing after the fact, but in the moment, I'd be on your hit list.
Yes.
But no, I actually kind of like this movie. I don't think it's a like high quality movie in terms of like the things it's trying to say. Like, it wears its themes on its sleeve. It's not trying to be anything more than what it is. But for what it is, it's just kind of a fun ride. It's just kind of a good time overall. It really is an emotional piece in terms of like it plays on your emotions more than just trying to give you a straight, like I said, you know, a well thought out argument against, like, as you said, there's like a class structure thing going on. They don't bother with like trying to deconstruct it. They're just like, that's bad, right, baby? And baby's like, you know it, Johnny. And that's basically it for the whole movie. But I found myself throughout the movie having fun. I think that's the biggest thing here, is that I didn't at any point in this roll my eyes at how over the top they were being, because it felt just so earnest in the way it was doing it. So I guess, yes, I did enjoy myself. Now, on the flip side of that, Peter...
Why are you making assumptions? How dare you assume things about...
Okay, fine. Tell me how much you love it.
Well, that's also an assumption there. There's a wide spectrum of assumptions. I don't know. Like, it's fine for what it is. But did I personally get much out of it? Not really. Like, yeah. I think the romance, like, there's definitely some steps in the romance that feel like we skipped a beat somewhere here or there for me, that it felt like it didn't sort of make me endeared to like the characters first. You know, it wouldn't have killed to... I don't know. I guess I wish I found the main character a bit more endearing before a romance started. It was kind of like she's only defined by the fact that she's falling for someone, as opposed to she's a full-fledged character first. So that was kind of in the way for me. My bigger thing, though, and I've got a feeling I might repeat this over the next 7 episodes, give or take, depending on how the movies do it. But once they start dancing, and the movie's like, hey, this is our equivalent of a car chase. We're going to just enjoy watching them be good dancers for like 3 minutes as music plays.
Right.
Every time that happened, I was bored. Every time.
Okay.
I don't enjoy watching just dancing. Okay? It's like, I get it, the skill, I understand doing it, but watching it, I just don't get it. I never have.
I mean, I somewhat agree in that. I agree that I'm not as interested in the dancing itself, at least not in this movie. I do think that I have seen movies where dancing is done in a very interesting way. But I also think that in this movie, there's not a single scene where the actual dancing is all that's really going on. Like, every single time there's dancing, it's more about building or defining the relationship between the dancers.
No, you're right. It is. It's always just that way in this. And I don't think this is a bad movie. I'll make that very clear. I am not calling this a poorly made film.
Put that on the box.
But my point is, though, is that every time we get one of these dancing scenes, I get what it's saying. And this is the same way I feel about musicals, funnily enough, with songs and musicals. I get what it's saying and doing for the characters in the first, like, 20, 30 seconds, right? You know, a good example is when Baby first sees all the dancers being themselves and dancing, and they're all, like, groping each other and, like...
she sees the dirty side of dancing.
The dirty side of dancing, where they're just straight up, like, rubbing their genitals on each other and doing all sorts of stuff. Like, that goes on for so long, and like, it made its point. Like, she sees a couple of moves, it goes back to her face. I'm like, okay, I get it. But then we spend like 3-4 minutes of just more of it, and I get that if you enjoy watching that, and if that's like part of the appeal to you, and I get why in a movie called Dirty Dancing, for the audience it's aimed for, it is part of the appeal. But for me, I'm just like, okay, can we get on with the plot? Can we keep things moving here and maybe do some other things, please?
I get what you're saying, and I do think that specific sequence definitely did go on too long. I think that they could have trimmed that down a little bit, or at the very least, trim down the time between Baby showing up and Johnny showing up, because that part felt like it took too long. But I think in general, the dancing scenes kind of just worked as long as they needed to. I didn't really ever feel like there was anything that stood out for too long beyond that. Yeah. So,
like, this is a personal thing. I'm probably going to say this about a few of these movies. Not all of them. It kind of depends, because there's definitely been movies that, if not dancing, feature some kind of activity I have no interest in and of itself, but the way it's presented is still fine. Like, I have no problem with, say, a montage in the middle of the movie where it's them repeating the same sort of, because they set up, hey, we're going to try and do this thing where I lift you up over my head, and they keep trying and they keep falling, and it's kind of like a funny montage. I'm like, I understand this. You've set a clear goal. You've shown me the struggles. You're showing me how they're getting closer, but not quite getting it, and you're setting this up because later on in the movie, when they're probably going to do it, it's going to be like, hey, they finally did the thing. That's fine. Like, that's like setting up a clear goal that I can understand and I can appreciate the setup and payoff of it. But just, you know, watching them sort of move their hips back and forward the same way for the 10th time, I'm like, yeah, you know, like, yeah, we did this already. It's fine.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I do think that is one of the faults with the movie, though, is that there's, I would say, I would put it at like 3, maybe 4, depending on how you count dance sequences between Baby and Johnny. And I think that the first one, well, again, it's depending on how you count, but the first main one kind of shows you all the moves. And then by the time you hit the final dance scene, the only thing they've got going for them is that lift that they've set up. That's the only thing that's like really setting this as, this is something new. This is something that
you're saying,
built to.
Like a heist movie, more of the plan, as it were, should have been concealed from the audience so we could be wowed when the actual show happened.
I mean, that, or just a more, maybe there was a change in dance that like I just didn't notice, but it seemed like whatever dance they did, because there's one part where he talks about like, oh, this new dance style that like I really want to try out and whatnot at the final dance. I couldn't tell if he was doing it because it seemed very similar to the other dance that he was doing at the very least. So
yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously this is kind of notorious for being the most famous chick flick of all time, pretty much. Like, that's kind of like,
I don't know if I would say the most famous dancing movie. I'll say that.
I don't know. I feel like it always comes up. You always hear about it when like girlfriends pestering their boyfriends to watch Dirty Dancing. I feel like it's the thing that gets brought up more than any other movie of its kind.
That's fair.
And I guess it's, you know, I guess it boils down to Patrick Swayze being hunky and doing all of these smooth moves, and that's pretty much it.
I loved when Patrick Swayze showed up in this movie because it's like there's a collection of other staff members at this place, and they actually seem like they could be like early 20s, somewhere in that range. And then Patrick Swayze walks in, and I'm like, dude, you are 30 something. What are you doing here?
For the record, I'm checking, he was 35 when this came out.
That's pretty smack dab in the middle of 30 something. So, yep.
Yeah, hence the problem of it being a 17-year-old girl as his love interest.
Well, I mean, Jennifer Grey.
I'm sure she's older. Yeah,
it was only 8 years younger than Patrick Swayze, so she would have been like 27.
Yeah, well, yeah, fair. Like in the real world, fair enough. But if we're pretending that she's a teenager in this movie, like, her dad has every right to be a little upset.
Oh yeah,
what's going on?
No doubt. I actually, that's the part that surprised me the most in this movie is Jerry Orbach's character, because we all know the archetype of this character, the stern old dad who just doesn't get with the time sort of thing. But like, I really like the way he played it. Like there's a few swerves in here where he does stuff that I think go completely against the archetype as it's like developed, and it really makes him a more standout character to me.
Yeah, I think they go out of their way to make sure he's not a bad person. He's just like, if he falls into some of these tropes in the sense that he is the dad who assumes the worst about certain things, but he kind of like still goes out of his way to do the right thing in a couple of cases that sort of show that, oh, his moral center is actually right. He's just very biased about certain things.
Yeah, he's very old school, but like he's a good person still.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, it's like, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, there's a sister character who's kind of a recurring thing throughout the movie.
I kept expecting her to be more than she was, and then by the end I realized it's like, oh, you're just the butt monkey. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, more or less just a running joke. There's a character named Penny who's like Swayze's regular dance partner. But again, she's relative. I mean, she kind of drives a lot of the plot because of a situation she's in early on, but it's not. She's not really that much of a focus though. Like it really is just about the two leads. Once it gets the father is absolutely the third most important character in the movie. There's no question. So yeah, I don't know.
I mean, outside of that, I would say that the next biggest star of this movie is the soundtrack, because there are so many songs from this that I'm just like, oh yeah, this was a thing I heard a lot of, especially like growing up. It was definitely a lot on when I was a kid.
There's definitely some songs in this I know more from other movies. Not the main song. I mean, obviously Time of Your Life is just tied directly to this, but some of the other ones I'm like, oh, I bet there's tons of people who associate it purely with this, whereas I've just heard it with whatever other random movie. Yeah.
There's a movie or a song smack dab in the middle of the movie. She's Like the Wind, which apparently was written and performed by Patrick Swayze. I was unaware, but I actually know that from like a 3-second long clip of it that's played in a totally separate movie that I love so much more and I've seen numerous times. So when I started playing this, I'm like, hey, look, it's that thing.
What movie?
500 Days of Summer.
Okay.
I don't know why I like that movie so much, but I do.
I'm not here to judge you.
No, you judge me for a lot of stuff, Pete. I feel like I gotta have a little defensive measure at some points. Because it's another, like, somewhat romance movie, and I know that you are all poo-poo on that.
I'm not against romance movies. I love Past Lives that I just saw a couple of weeks ago.
All right.
I like good romance movies.
So I guess, let me ask you that. Regarding Dirty Dancing, how did you feel about the romance itself? Obviously, you said that the main character like wasn't developed, but did you think that the romance worked?
Not really.
No?
I felt nothing. I felt nothing. Like, I don't know if it's just because we've evolved so much to actually try and make the characters that would have this type of romance, like, be a bit more nuanced and actually feel a bit more real. Like, it does feel like a fantasy in a lot of ways. It feels like they are movie characters. And I'm not against that. There's lots of movies I like that are filled with just straight up movie characters, right? But I think when it comes to this kind of thing, I do prefer something that's a bit more based in realism, I guess, because for whatever reason, I don't know, like something that it feels like it has something to say. And I guess you could say it has something to say about its class system. I don't know if this has much to say about romances though, necessarily, or...
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, for the romance being such a center focal point of the movie, it does feel like it doesn't actually have, like, there's nothing that the romance itself accomplishes or changes about anything. It's all much more about this idea of the class system and, like, can these rich people accept a new form of dancing in their life, pretty much.
Pretty much. Because, because for the first, like, 20 minutes, I was kind of thinking, oh, how much we're just focusing on her. We're focusing on Baby, and we barely see Swayze for a bit. And then he's introduced, and they're so kind of separate, and then the plot kind of thrusts them together. When it actually turns to romance, and I knew it was going there, so I was kind of, like, looking for the seeds. I'm like, okay, I can see that she's looking at him with these eyes, like she's enamored with him the first second she sees him. Her eyes light up, right? Absolutely. But all their scenes together, I wasn't really feeling much from them. And then all of a sudden she makes this kind of confession, and it kind of just springboards the entire thing immediately without much build to it. And I kind of, that was when I said earlier, like, one of the things that I think is, like, not working for me in this movie is sometimes it felt like there was sort of just leaps where, of course they're together now because this is a movie about them being together, rather than you have convinced me that they feel this strongly about each other, you know?
Yeah. I get what you're saying, and I do agree to some extent, but I also think that particularly the montage that we get very early on where, like, we see them working together and being closer and closer, I get this idea of that's when the love is developing. Like, I know it's not super explicitly shown, but there are enough sequences in there where I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that this is a working romance. And by the time that we do that, get that confession scene that you were talking about, I think that it has done enough to, maybe not full on like this is true love, but at the very least, I can completely understand her utter infatuation with this guy and why he would feel the same back.
I think this is what I'm getting though, is that I get her side of it. I don't think it ever sold me that he was feeling something for her. I don't think I ever felt it. And then just all of a sudden they were together, and that was okay. I guess he is. I guess we don't have to explain anything. He's got a penis, so he just opportunity presented itself, and he just took it, and we're just going from there.
I get you're making a joke to some extent,
yes,
but there is actually like a subplot in this movie that like goes against exactly what you're saying. So
I kind of, I know, but like you could argue that he doesn't really think of it any more than that until after things have already started. I don't know, like.
No, yeah, I got you.
I'm just saying, for a movie that's always brought up as like one of the most important romance movies of all time, right? It's always like in that kind of like lineage. I just didn't think the romance was actually that impressive. This feels far more, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised at this, but it feels far more like a movie aimed at teenagers that's kind of as deep as you would think that would be, and it's just nothing but the raw sex appeal and some fun dancing and some a soundtrack. It's nothing more than that, and I think maybe it was wrong to even expect anything more than that, but I thought because it had such a legacy, because it is persisted as a name and the song and all these other things that have kind of lasted in pop culture, I think I expected something a little bit more than just a typical teen romance from the 80s.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I get what you're saying there, because I like that's the sort of thing where if I were to sit down and watch some like, critically acclaimed movie everybody loves, and the center like moral of the movie is nothing more than you just don't get it, Dad. Like, yeah, I'd be a little bit like, why is this so much praised? I do think there is a level of like nostalgia to it and a level of wish fulfillment to it that does harken back to, like you were saying, a movie made for teens. But I also think that that's the fun of it for me. That's the part where I wasn't going in with a critical eye in terms of like what it was going for theming. I was more just enjoying the ride the whole way, because I wasn't expecting much more than, as you were saying, one of the greatest chick flicks.
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things, though. It's the not being any more than the sum of its parts. It's the fact that I don't really enjoy extended dancing scenes on their own merit, even if what they're doing is exceptional. I'm just not feeling it. It's all these things kind of like adding up to all just kind of being underwhelmed. Don't get me wrong. Let me make this clear. It's better than Twilight, okay?
Put that on the box.
It's better than 50 Shades of Grey. I'm not saying that it's not like working on some level. I just don't think it. I think this is for a certain audience, but Friday the 13th Part 7 is to me, right? I love Friday the 13th Part 7 for all its dumb, stupid glory and its dumb telekinetic girl versus Jason Voorhees nonsense. But it's nothing more than that. It is shallow, and if you don't happen to like that kind of movie, you will get absolutely nothing out of it. This is for a particular audience, right? This works for its target audience. It's a serviceable thing. There's nothing that I can sit and nitpick at it, and I can say what doesn't work for me. But there's nothing I can really point at and say, oh, this makes it like trash. This makes it like poorly made. There is nothing like that here. But I just don't like it that much. And I didn't enjoy watching it that much.
I mean, to be fair, that's kind of what I expect from most of this season. So that's fair. Because again, these movies, I guess what I'm hoping out of this season, the reason that I wanted to do it, A, is because you get to pick the seasons. I just wanted to stick it to you. But B, is because I kind of think that these movies, while they aren't high art, while they aren't saying something deep and meaningful, I do think that there is a level of enjoyment that you can get out of how shallow they are. And I know you're saying you don't like the extended dance scenes, but I think that because a lot of these are also at the same time doing a romance arc, there is a lot more that you can get out of the characterization than Like, I don't know.
Yeah, just to fight you something on you said there, you just casually said these movies are not high art. I think it's wrong to go in with that assumption. I think there's absolutely some movies that could be centered around dancing that may actually be really special because of what it does with its characters. And the dancing is nothing but a metaphor for something else, because it actually does have something more to say. I don't think this one really has that much more to say, beyond some really thin stuff about class systems. But, you know, I do think there is something you could use the dancing to stand in for something else and really say something. I just, you know, I don't think most of them are going to be that, but I do think it's possible. I believe in the power of cinema here, David, all right? I know you're such a cynic, you're such a curmudgeon.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, right? I mean, I am. But when I said these, I meant more of the, like, that string of mid to late 80s movies. Like, those are the ones that I think modern day, if we get another dance movie out, I think, there's a lot of ways that you can have a deeper thing to them. There are even a few that are coming up on votes that we have yet to determine whether or not they'll win, but I think that those things are going to use dance in a very different way than this movie did. To a point where it might actually approach what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, at the time of recording, this vote will be done by now, but there's going to be 2 vote episodes. The first one, as we're recording, is up for vote right now, and the choices are Fame, Climax, and Billy Elliot, which are 3 very different looking movies, so I'm very curious as to what the audience is going to pick for that one. But yes, very, very different things.
Yeah, but like, even just looking at those, I've seen Billy Elliot. I know that one uses dance to mean something else, and it does kind of have that messaging that you're talking about.
I'm sure some of them do. Still doesn't make me excited for a whole season of this.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, we sprinkle it in with sci-fi over on another podcast and good movies on another one. You're fine.
All right, spoilers for Dirty Dancing. Let's get this on the road here.
Spoiler alert: nobody puts baby in a corner.
Honestly, that line was such a flub for me in this. It was not like a big deal. I've heard that line quoted so many times, and it was just like, this isn't that good a line in the moment. Like, they didn't set it up. I thought it was a payoff to something that had been set up about being put in the corner. And no, it isn't.
She just literally is just sitting in a corner, and Patrick Swayze comments on it.
I thought this line meant something, like there was depth to it because of like everyone quotes it and it's like a big payoff. No, it's just she's sitting in a corner. That's it. That's it. See, again, I was going with too much expectations, too high hopes. Anyway, so the movie starts and she's like, it's 1960 whatever. I can't remember the exact year, but it's before the Beatles and before JFK is shot, so probably 62, 61.
63, summer of 63.
Oh, so it's right before JFK gets shot, because that's like November 63. Fair enough.
Yep.
So the family's going to this vacation home. We see that it's got like a staff. The dad's a doctor. He's like friends with the owner who wants to kiss his ass the entire time he's there. Newman's walking up and down the pathways.
I want to be clear. This is not the actor that plays Newman. This is Newman. This is like just Newman.
Wayne Knight. No, he doesn't just play one character, because I actually know him even more as his character in Third Rock from the Sun, who is at least a little bit different from Newman.
Okay, fair enough.
But I would say that Newman, his character in Jurassic Park and this are all pretty similar.
Right.
They are pretty similar. So we establish kind of the status quo here. We establish that we have this staff, because Baby like runs off that night to just sort of wander around and see what's going on, and she overhears the staff kind of bickering. And this is Patrick Swayze's entrance, where he comes in and kind of like doesn't fight, but has a bit of a back and forth with Robbie, who's kind of like the one of the college kids who's one of the waiters, because there's even a class system in the staff, because all the waiters seem to be like college kids who have got a summer job. And the entertainment staff, which he's a part of, are the people who have these specific skills, but they're from poor backgrounds. So there's a bit of a clash there that's kind of set up with this scene. So yeah, I mean, in terms of script structure, it sets this stuff up quite well, so you understand it for the rest of the movie. I can't fault any of that.
Oh yeah, no, it does a great job of setting everything up, and it allows our us to follow baby this whole time rather than just doing random cutaways to like things she wouldn't know about. I'm pretty sure there's nothing in this movie that's really... Okay, no, there's one scene in this movie that's definitively not where it's baby's POV that I can think of, but for the most part, she's our Avatar character.
Yeah.
The only other things I would bring up there is that it very explicitly points out how much baby is a daddy's girl, how she just like clings onto him and he loves her unconditionally, and it's just 100% setting up disappointment for later in the movie.
And we don't get this till later, really, but we do find out that the sister is somewhat jealous of this like daddy's girl relationship because she's the good girl. She's the one that dad listens to. She's the one that dad really cares about.
Yep.
So that sets up her bit.
And she, after this summer, she's done with high school, I believe, and so she's going to the Peace Corps in some other country. So she's going... Her whole thing is she believes that she can make a difference, that just one person can go out, make a difference, and like make things better for people. And that's kind of her motivation and her viewpoint on all the conflicts that she gets into later on in this movie.
Yeah. Well, she changes this entire holiday spot, then, it's the end of Rocky IV. If I can change, you can change. Everybody can change.
She gets up on stage, she punches out Patrick Swayze. She just says, yep. That's how this was always meant to go.
Oh, dear. Yeah. Patrick Swayze's an interesting one for me because, like, on the few things that I've seen him in, I know I saw Ghost when I was young, but I don't really remember it. But I watched Roadhouse for the first time like a few years ago, and honestly thought it was really dull. Like, it was really built up because everyone talks about this cult, like, dumb action movie, and I didn't even think it was that fun. I thought he was he was like walking cardboard trying to be a tough man. It was weird. He is more naturally fit to this role. He feels like he does belong more in this character than the one I saw him in that. To be fair. But yeah, he's introduced as this like hot shot, dance instructor. He puts on a show. One of the big things that's introduced is that the boss really doesn't want any fancy, dirty dancing. He wants like classical things. He wants stuff that's appropriate for the rich clientele that come to this spot.
I mean, there's still like merengue and stuff like that. It's not like all waltzes and all whatever. He is meant to provide some sex appeal to the role, but like, it's always the classy level of dancing, none of like the grinding up on each other stuff that we see later on.
Yeah, sex appeal is a good word because, as he points out later, like when he started getting this job, he would just be like basically propositioned by like 3 women a day, of these rich women who just want a taste of the of the sweaty man life, I guess.
Slumming it pretty much.
Yeah. So that's something that comes up later as well, which isn't a surprise, all things considered.
No.
But yeah, later that night, Baby bumps into one of the other guys that works here.
It's Patrick Swayze's cousin.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you his name, but he has a cousin who is a recurring character.
Yes, well, the character has a cousin, just to be clear. It's not, it's not I mean, maybe it is Patrick Swayze's real cousin. Who knows? I don't know. But she offers to help him carry these watermelons he's really struggling with, and he's like, oh, I shouldn't. The guests aren't supposed to see this. And it's basically the staff quarters. They've got all these huts, these little cabins that they all sort of stay in. But she goes up with them, and she sees them all dancing, sort of their way of dancing. And this is where we get the first extended dance scene, with her kind of walking through with this watermelon and just like bumping into people who are grinding on each other and all sorts. And then Swayze comes in, he starts dancing with people. And the main plot detail here that obviously sticks out is that he's dancing with his dance partner, this blonde who also does dance lessons and stuff at the compound.
Yep, for all the dudes, I presume.
Yeah, and the cousin just mentions, yeah, they're great together. I mean, it's amazing they're not a couple. And Baby's like, oh, they're not a couple?
I'm sorry, you said they're not together? Zip.
And at one point, Swayze does kind of like dance his way over and like pulls her onto the dance floor and gets her to dance for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a bit longer. It's not a long time. It's basically just for the end of the song. And he just kind of like leaves as soon as the song's over. Everyone starts clapping, and she sort of turns around and realizes he's gone. He's Batmaned out of the scene, and I thought this was kind of like a representation that maybe at this point in the movie he is kind of like a love them and leave them kind of guy. Obviously, this is like an innocent thing because it's just a dance, but it's kind of an implication that if this was about sex, this might be who he is too. He might just, have sex and run away.
Yeah. I mean, you learn more about him as a character, but I think this initial impression in this scene is you see her still like dancing even after the song ends. So she's definitely into this. And it's also implied she's a horrible dancer. Like she has no idea how to dance. And it's only being led by Swayze, where she's like, okay, I'm getting it now. But when she opens her eyes and everyone's clapping, she doesn't see Swayze anywhere. You see this disappointment in her eyes. She's just like, oh, all right, well, I guess that was too good to be true. And she just walks off.
Yeah, the other thing that's set up around here as well is that, well, two things. One is that our sister is getting buddy with the guy named Robbie, one of the waiters, and seems like that's progressing. Although there is like a quick moment somewhere here as well where she sort of like storms back as if they've been out in the woods or whatever, and he's pulled a move and she's upset by it, and she's upset about it. But the other thing, and I do want to talk about this actually, this is probably just before actually she finds this place and sees it all, is Baby is, I won't say set up necessarily, but the boss like brings over his grandson who's training to like run hotels like this place. Yeah. And I can only describe this guy as Tobey Maguire's father, because every face this guy pulled was making me think of Tobey Maguire pulling goofy faces.
I can see it. I see what you're talking about.
Particularly when he's talking to Baby and he's like trying to be schmoozy and he's like smiling and saying, I was like, you're just Tobey Maguire. Like, what is this? Yeah. You're 80s Tobey Maguire.
I mean, I think the best way to describe this guy is literally via a line that he used where he's trying to like convince Baby how much of a catch he is. He's like, yeah, there's this one girl and I literally took her away from this guy she was with. And he said, what does he have that I don't have? And she said, 2 hotels. Oh, it's like, all right. Yeah, you're that kind of prick. Yeah. I got it.
Oh, he's insufferable. He's awful. He's awful. He's meant to be awful. So she dips away as quickly as she can. But he pops in and out throughout the movie, just in sort of small bits. He's not a major character by any means. But yeah. So just to get to like where the plot really kicks in, and I did not know this part of the plot. This was all news to me.
This really took me off guard. Yeah.
So the blonde dance partner Penny, right, the one who usually dances with Swayze, she's upset, and I think it's like the kitchen. She's like crying in the corner. People do put Penny in the corner, as turns out.
Oh, Penny lives in the corner. We don't need to talk about Penny.
But not Debbie, Baby, Debbie. Where are we getting
Francis.
Debbie from? Yeah, her name's Francis, it turns out later, but everyone calls her Baby. She goes and gets Swayze and the cousin, and they come and like help her back. And it turns out that she's upset because she's pregnant. And it turns out also that it's Robbie's baby. So there's the same guy who's trying to like put the moves on her sister who knocked up Penny. And she's upset because like she doesn't have the money to deal with this. The cousin's like, yeah, I know this guy who's like a doctor who can do it next Thursday, but he needs $250. And she's really upset. And I think what really caught me off guard here was just how angry Swayze kept getting at Baby every time Baby dared open her mouth to like ask a question or like say something. Because she's like, wait, Robbie? Like when she says Robbie, like Swayze stands up all like, how dare you question anything that Penny's done?
Yeah, well, I think it does a good job of explaining it later on in the movie, but it's definitely interesting in this scene because it seems like it's out of nowhere. But it comes back to the idea that it's always these rich people judging these younger people. Like that's the theme of the movie. That is what it all really comes back to, is this idea of making these assumptions, making these judgments on the entertainers, but more so the lower class from this upper class that sticks around here. And Baby, despite the fact that she is a good person, Swayze only sees her as the upper class. She sees her as a guest at this place.
And to be fair to Baby in the scene, she's not reacting like that because she's being judgmental. She's reacting like that because this is the same guy that's trying to put the moves on her sister. So she has a different reason for reacting to his name, but that's not how Swayze takes it.
Well, even then, the first time, before we even get Robbie's explanation, she just assumes it's Swayze's. She just assumes like, oh, so is he going to do something about it? And Swayze's like, oh, because it had to be mine, didn't it? Yeah, screw you. And he just walks off.
Yeah, same with our dad. Obviously, throughout the rest of the movie, once he becomes aware of all this, he just assumes it's his as well for the vast majority of the runtime. But this motivates Baby to go to her father and say, "Hey, I can't tell you why, Dad, right? But I want to help someone, so I need $250, and I can't tell you why. Just give it to me, please." And he's like, "Is it illegal?" And I didn't think it was when she said it, although it kind of turns out to be, because it's not like an actual, like, I was actually thinking to myself, $250 for an abortion in the US seems a bit cheap to me, but
yeah,
it's the 80s.
Well, to be fair, it's the 60s.
Oh, sorry, it's right, it's the 60s. Good point.
Yeah, so I actually did the inflation calculator because I was like, how much? Because she said, can I have $250? And the dad's like, that's a whole lot of money. I was like, how much is a whole lot of money here? It turns out it's $2,500 of today's dollars. So
that's a lot to ask for.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent money just to say, don't ask questions. I need this now.
Yeah.
So,
I actually, was there any, like, now that I'm thinking about this, was there official legal abortion in the 60s?
I'm looking it up. It says here that Roe v. Wade, which was kind of the landmark one, was in 1973. So
Okay.
It may have been legal in certain places. It says 11 states had it in the 60s.
Okay.
But I don't know specifically here.
That certainly sounds... It definitely sounds like there's a good chance that it's not an easy thing to go and get done.
Right.
Yeah, based on that. So fair enough.
Specifically, there's one doctor who's available for one day, and he is ridiculously expensive. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. But then it turns out that this is more of a black market thing because, once all this happens, they're all... I mean, obviously there's a lot of movie before we get to that point, but I just want to skip ahead and talk about that. It turns out that she's actually feeling quite sick now. She's feeling ill. Whatever this guy's done is not left her in a good state.
Well, they specifically say, because the cousin's the one who took her to the appointment, literally says, like, he had a dirty knife and a fold-out table. Like, he was not on the up and up.
Yeah, and she was screaming behind the door. He was trying to get in, all the rest of it. And this actually eventually, like, motivates Baby again to just go and get her dad and just be like, hey, this is what's happened. Come and, like, because he's a doctor. Yeah. So, and he does. He fixes her up, and, she's going to be okay. And this is one of the examples I think we were getting at earlier where, despite his attitude to a lot of things, like he comes and does this with no questions, really. He just does it because he wants to help her. So.
And that's obviously, once it's all done, he makes his judgment call on Johnny. He assumes Johnny's responsible. And so he forbids Baby from seeing him. But, like, he's a good dude at heart. He's an overprotective dad, but, like, morality-wise, he's a good dude. And that's something that I don't see a lot in that kind of archetype anymore. Yeah.
Now, again, if he said to her, "You're 17, this man is, approaching retirement age," maybe, you could side with them quite easily on that. But
yeah. I'm not sure they actually ever say Swayze's exact age, but he's definitely older than she is.
Yeah, they never do, but, like, even just the way he talks about how he's been working here for years already just kind of implies, certain things. Because I think at one point he's explaining how he got into dancing, and I think he mentioned, like, being maybe at the end of high school or something when, like, someone gave him this chance to audition or something like that. So it definitely feels like he's at least 25 based on this. I mean, obviously he's much older than that in the world, but his character has to be at least that age.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that would put him at the 8-year difference that they actually are in real life. So maybe that is about where they were aiming for.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, there's a lot before the abortion that goes kind of wrong comes up. But yeah, I mean, even just the idea that that's like the driving force of the start of this movie is that because she's getting an abortion and she had a show planned with Swayze that day, so she doesn't think she can get it, Baby effectively steps in and is like, hey, train me to do it, even though I have no dancing experience.
Yeah.
So
that's where we get like a 10-minute long montage.
Yeah. It starts out where they're just like practicing and she's doing horrible inside, and then he gets the genius idea to take her into a field because it's more romantic, I guess.
Now we go full Karate Kid. It's like, look, you want to learn how to dance. We're going to take you out into the wilderness. That's how you learn.
I would have popped though if she just did a crane kick to him at random at some point.
Yeah. It's when they're out in the water, just
yeah, he's trying to do the lift thing. She can't quite jump up. She gets scared. So he's like, let's do it in the water. So they're doing it in the water, and he holds her up for a bit, but then they fall in the water and all the rest of it. And that stuff was fine. This is them finally starting to bond and whatever.
And again, it starts out where because the dance is in like, I think it's 2 days. Like, it's ridiculously close by. And she starts out with him. He's always like frustrated and like yelling at her, no, do this, you're not doing it right. And it's very slowly over the course of this montage that you do get this feeling of, okay, they're starting to like each other. It's not implicitly romantic yet, but at least they're good with each other. They are becoming friends at the very least. So it's breaking down this wall that obviously Swayze had in regards of never fraternize with the rich people outside of like what he has to for his job. Yeah.
And the dance itself does take place because it's actually when they come back after the dance that they find Penny in bad shape, and that leads to that next part. The dance itself, she has a little bit awkward and stiff in places. She chickens out of the lift, which honestly is probably one of the few times I gave a genuine laugh. Is she runs up for the lift and then just kind of stops and does a little like stupid dance to sort of cover for it.
I mean, it's like straight up the dance you would do if you just like forgot the lyrics at like a karaoke bar or something where you're just like filling time. Okay, moving on. Yeah, but it's actually the confrontation with her dad where he's like, oh, you're not the girl I thought you were. You're associating. I don't want you to ever see any of these people again. She actually just doesn't go back to her room. She just goes to Johnny's instead. And this is where they sort of slow dance to some music. They open up, or she opens up about her feelings anyway and says, she opens up some other stuff.
She's like, oh, I hate the idea of never feeling what I felt with you these last week or whatever. And yeah, pretty much just montages into them kissing and, the implication of sex. And that's kind of it. And I felt like a bit of a leap here because I was like, okay, I guess we're just here now.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I thought, okay, they did a decent job of setting up the idea of like the summer romance. Like, again, the infatuation, I think, was established well enough between the two of them. Obviously, they don't know like anything about each other's personal lives, at least not that we've seen. So I don't think that at this point it is full-fledged like love or anything like that, but it does feel like it did a good job saying, no, physically they were intimate together, like with the dancing and all that, and that's rubbed off until now they want to take that to the next level sexually.
Yeah, like I say, I completely get it from her side. I feel like she's this younger, more naive, kind of infatuated. I think from his side of it, it doesn't feel as developed to me by the time, because I think when she makes that confession, basically saying, hey, I've got feelings, I just don't feel it from his side as much, but then it just kind of, which is why I thought it actually kind of makes sense where he was acting awkward the next day, because, she goes to see Penny the next day and she's feeling better, and then Swayze comes in and like they're not making eye contact, Swayze's not looking at her, and I thought it was going to be more of a thing where he felt guilty, either because of her age or because he's crossed a line, and I was really surprised that like literally when she speaks to him outside the cabin for like a second, and he's still been kind of cold and saying, oh, I need to go and do this class, I have to run away. She just sort of says, hey, Johnny. He turns around, and then they just both smell at each other, and that's that tension over. Like, that tension is just gone now.
See, I didn't think the tension was so much of it was between them. It was the fact that Penny was in the room, because the moment she leaves, Penny chews him out. She's like, you had one rule, which is not to mess with the rich people. And look at what you're doing. Of course I could tell you had sex. So I think the tension was more from that than...
To be fair, he's already a hypocrite, because it turns out he's basically getting paid by a rich guy to screw his wife. I mean, the rich guy doesn't know he's paying him for that, but that's effectively what he's paying him for. There's this rich woman who comes up here and spends the weeks here, but the husband only comes up at the weekends. And we see later on that she's like, oh, hey, lover boy, I'll see you again tonight. And then the husband's like, I'm paying you for some extra dance lessons. Make sure my wife gets her money's worth. And the whole implication is basically that he's paying him to be a man slut for his wife.
The term is gigolo.
Gigolo, whatever.
Yep.
Do it from me.
No, yeah. But I think that, again, it informs the character, because if we go back to what you were saying before, that you weren't feeling why Swayze like was into her at this point, or like that he didn't get that far. I think one of the major recurring factors of this is that Swayze feels like nobody ever does anything for him. They do stuff to him, they do stuff with him, but nobody ever does anything for him. Nobody ever is actually generous. And so seeing Baby not only A, shell out that money for his close friend to get that abortion, but B, going to tell her father and saying, like, you know, she's going to be sick, you need to help her. I think that that's him saying, like, okay, there is someone who cares about maybe not just me, but like other people enough, and that's kind of opening him up in that way.
Yeah, because the first time when she just gets the money, he's actually not that receptive to that. He just kind of criticizes her and says, "Oh, you ran and asked Daddy for it, big whoop." You know, he kind of talks down to her. But then when she goes to get the dad to help Penny when she's actually sick, he's like, "Okay, yeah, that actually took some guts. That's, you know, okay, that actually means something." And then sort of the third rule of threes, of course, is that when she kind of confesses to spending the night with him to save his job later, which doesn't work, obviously, but he's not even mad that he still gets fired because no one's ever like put their necks on the line, especially since by that point it's set up that he's kind of upset that she's so scared to tell her dad that she's with him. So like, yeah, I mean, that side of it makes sense. Like, by the time you get to that like late part of the movie and he's saying no one's ever done anything like this for me before, like at that point, yeah, I get it. I get why there's an attachment there. It's more just the initial kind of like onboarding from his side that feels a little bit just because it's a movie to me. I don't know.
I mean, I think that right up until she went to go get her dad, I think Swayze was not romantically interested. I mean, physically, maybe he wouldn't have mind doing something, but I think that it's only when she proved how she was willing to put her neck on the line with her own father in that way that she's like, he's basically saying, yeah, okay, you're actually a good person. You're someone who like I could see myself at least hanging out more with. So I think that's where that starts to develop at the very least.
I guess it's a trope of like this type of fantasy though, is that the guy is kind of uninterested to start with. Yeah. And I think that's almost like a detriment to it, because I think for me, if he just glanced at her a couple times just to sort of show that he's attracted to her, it might have went a long way for me to like just get that, okay, now that it's progressing, he's, you know, and maybe that would defeat part of the point that he's more fallen for her ideals and her character than he is, you know, the typical physical stuff. But at the same time though, the dancing itself is such a physical activity with so much grinding that it almost feels weird to say that that's not a factor as well. But
yeah, I was gonna say they do one sequence where it's like 4 times in a row he runs his hand down like the inside of her arm, and they just show her trying not to laugh because it tickles. But by the time they hit the end of that sequence, it's so incredibly intimate between them that I'm like, how are you not already? You know, this feels like the sort of thing where, especially from Baby's perspective, where she's already into this guy super hard, I feel like she automatically would have been like, so let's go back to your place, like, now.
Yes. What you're saying is you're wondering why he's not into her super hard yet.
I mean, again, I think that makes sense in the course of the movie, though, where he had this one rule of don't fraternize with the rich people. It works out.
It was a dumb joke.
Oh, hard. Sorry, the Benadryl's hidden.
Okay. I mean, honestly, like this next chunk of the movie, where they're kind of like spending time together and they're having these nights, because they do it 3 or 4 times, I think, over the course of the movie once they're established, where she's going back to him like time and time again.
There's one part where it's just pouring down rain, and she's like, all right, I'm going out. And the family's like, where could you possibly be going right now? And she makes up something about like charades or something.
Yeah, but the dad's giving the side eye. He's doubting anything that's coming out of her mouth right now. Yeah, and we get like one of the famous scenes that I'd definitely seen a clip of is them miming the song as they're dancing like with each other.
The Loverboy song.
Yeah, and he's like on the floor saying it, and she's like walking around like the little like changing shield thing. Like I definitely seen a clip of that for whatever reason. I guess people just like it because it's
it's sexy. I mean, that's literally what it is. It's a sexy scene.
That's what they're going for. The plot towards the end of the movie though is that he basically declines to go with the rich woman, right? In front of Baby, so Baby sees him decline this and is all like, "Oh, he turned the rich woman down. He must really like me." But,
this is after Baby asked him in bed, like, "So you've like slept with everyone here, right?" And he's like, "I mean, yeah, but I didn't like it."
I felt used afterwards. But this basically makes her vengeful, and so she actually ends up spending the night with Robbie because the sister's actually thinking she's going to sleep with Robbie, basically just out of like a weird desperate play because she's like miserable. Effectively,
she's like, "Oh, why should Baby?" Because I think at this point she sussed out the Baby's like got a fling going on.
Yeah.
So she's basically saying like, well, if she can have it, so can I. And Robbie's super into me.
She basically says, "Oh, you're just jealous, Baby, that now I'm Daddy's girl." But it's almost like she wanted to be Daddy's girl when Baby was that, but now Baby's got a fling. Now she wants a fling.
Oh yeah.
So
I could fully imagine a separate cut of this movie where Baby gets the lift at the end of the movie, and then all it is the sister like also gets up on stage right afterwards and like tries to get her own lift going.
But it makes her vengeful, the rich woman that is, and she spends the night with Robbie, and when she's coming out for the walk of shame, she sees Baby leaving Patrick Swayze's place, and cut to like lunch or whatever it is, and the manager's just saying to Baby's dad, "Yeah, someone's wallet got stolen last night, and blah, 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 blah. Someone said they saw Johnny Castle, the dancer boy, in the area." And they're basically talking about how they're going to have to fire his ass because he's a thief, and it's other people have missed wallets over the summer, and he must be him. And Baby's like trying desperately to sort of defend him and say how it couldn't be him, but because his alibi is that he was alone in his cabin, which is not very good.
Reading.
Yes. So eventually, Baby confesses that she was with him. And that's the big sort of gesture that sort of like, and she has to do this in front of her father, which, you know, obviously is the drama is ramped up because of that.
But I love how she spends a good like 2 minutes just trying to first she goes for Neil, the guy who's like trying to hit on her this whole time, saying like, "Hey, he didn't do it, you got to believe me." And he's like, "Nah, he definitely did it." Then goes to the dad saying, "Dad, they're accusing an innocent man, you have to help me out here." And he's like, "Oh, how do we know he's innocent? Sounds like he's pretty guilty to me." Then she turns to the hotel manager and is like, "You got to believe me, he's innocent." And he's like, "Well, how would you know that?" And that's when she finally cracks and is like, "I may have been with him throughout all of last night."
Honestly, it does lead to probably one of the better scenes of the whole movie, though, is the scene after this where the dad's kind of sitting quietly on the dock, and she comes over to speak to him and makes it clear that she's sorry that she's like lied to him and disappointed him, but he's disappointed her as well because of how he's always propped himself up as this guy who says, "Yeah, I want you to change the world. I believe that everyone is equal." But he clearly has these biases where he looks down upon certain people. He expected her to be with someone who went to Harvard or Cambridge, some rich dude, and that he's being judgmental. It probably would have helped maybe if we saw a little bit more of that from him, perhaps. You know, him sort of posturing that maybe earlier on in the film.
I mean, there was one sequence that we glanced over where even after he said like, "Hey, you're not going to see this guy anymore," the next morning or very soon afterwards, he basically says like, "We're leaving tomorrow." And it's only after his whole family calls him out and says like, "Why? We're having a good time. We paid for the week. Let's stay here." That he finally he backs down and he's like, "All right, fine, we'll stay."
Well, except Baby. Baby just sits quietly staring at him the whole time because she knows why he's saying it, and the other two don't. The wife and the sister are like, "Wait, why? But why don't we just stay till Sunday and see the final show and everything else?" No, that's fair. I just wonder if maybe like maybe him saying some of this stuff, posturing earlier on, just to sort of. But that said, in and of itself, I think the scene works mainly just because the performances of both actors are pretty solid.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is the scene that all that stuff I was saying about Jerry Orbach, like this solidified it, where he doesn't just like brush off what she says. He doesn't ignore her. It's not even a thing where he just keeps his stone face. As soon as she goes to walk away, he turns, and then you see the tears welling up in his eyes based off what she's saying. It's a great performance.
Yeah. It's a good scene. It's definitely, I think, one of the better performance scenes of the whole movie. So, yeah, Johnny's getting fired anyway. He comes over to tell her that, or she's waiting in his place, rather, but same difference. He comes in, and she's very sorry, and she's mad, and she's like, oh my God, I did all that for nothing. Like, I pissed off my father, and, like, I had to admit all this, and you're getting fired anyway. But he says, no, look, this isn't for nothing. No one's ever put their neck out like that for me before. And, yeah, they kind of have this extended goodbye where, he's driving off, and they're having a smoochy smooch, and all the rest of it. It's this big kind of goodbye where you feel like this is kind of it. But of course, there's the big finale where he's going to come back. There's this final show. They've been talking about how some of them are getting involved. The sister's going to be singing in the show. And it's all going well enough. Baby's just kind of sitting with her parents, relatively supporting her sister and enjoying what's going on.
Yeah.
But then Johnny comes in, right, and he's Terminator 2 gear. He's got the leather jacket and the shades.
Well, sorry, I want to interrupt real quick with two things before we get into the very final sequence.
Yeah.
And that is, one, the Robbie situation, since Robbie has been hitting on the sister the whole time.
Yeah.
Robbie, the dad comes up, hands Robbie just an envelope full of cash and says, here, this will help you with college payments.
Well, actually,
and Robbie's like,
this ties in actually to what I was about to backtrack and say, is that I first noticed that he was wearing the T2 outfit when he goes to the dad to try and talk to him about the relationship. He tries to speak man to man to him, and the dad just kind of flips his lid and like gets really like, oh, don't you dare tell me how to think about my daughter, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, the dad off. Literally, because Johnny comes up and he's just like, look, I know that you think this way. And the dad's just like, you don't know what I think. You don't get to make judgments about me. Completely missing the point that that's everything he's been doing this whole time. Yeah,
and then, of course, he's... And to be fair, I get why it looks this way to him. Like, from his perspective, he thinks Johnny got someone pregnant and then immediately started flirting with his daughter. Like,
got someone pregnant, sent her to a back alley abortion,
yes,
and then started flirting with his daughter.
Right, it does look quite dodgy. And of course, this is the thing that comes up with the Robbie scene, is that when he hands him the money, Robbie goes, oh, by the way, thanks for taking care of that thing with Penny. Oh, real weight off my mind. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I assume... Baby told you.
Didn't Baby rat me out? I thought that was super obvious.
Yeah,
that would have happened.
Penny's claiming it's my kid, but you never know. These broads, they'll just blame anyone, won't they? And he just snaps the money back and he's like, get out of my sight.
Yeah. So that's a great little wrap up there. And then the other thing going on is we have the owner of the hotel talking to like the bandstand manager, and they're basically just relenting the fact of like, this is it. Our good old manor here is on the downswing because we're in a new age and nobody wants to learn the foxtrot with their parents on vacation. If only there were a way to bring younger people in.
Do you know what this is? This is, hey, Chuck, it's your cousin Marvin, Marvin Berry. That hot new sound you've been looking for? Well, listen to this.
Yeah.
That's all I can think about. Johnny comes in, he comes over and says, no one puts Baby in a corner. He takes her up on stage. He's like, hey, I was supposed to be gone, but I always do the final dance. And he hits play. And it is worth mentioning, like, there's not a lot of score in this movie. It's almost all songs. But there is a few little piano renditions of this main song that kind of trickle in throughout the movie. So he puts on Time of Your Life, and they start doing their dance, and it's very similar to the dance they did earlier, but it's more confident. She's better at it now. They're more in sync. They're more, passionate about it, blah, blah, blah. And all I could think was, especially by the time you get the people at the side watching on and everyone starts dancing and they encourage everyone to get involved, I'm like, this is Johnny B. Good from Back to the Future. This is just that scene where, he's not time traveled, but the idea is that, it's the hot new sound and it's making all these people realize, hey, this is great. This is a completely different type of thing.
Did you notice when they were zooming out at the end, the DeLorean that started flying away?
maybe I was just longing for a movie that I like a lot more.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all that was happening here. But they have their big dance. Of course they do the lift, right?
Yeah.
Although not before he jumps off the stage and all of his dancing buddies start backing him up. This is where it loses me a little bit. I'm like, okay, this is a bit too choreographed to be a spontaneous moment. I get that they're all dancers, but
no, I agree. There was a moment where he jumps off the stage. It goes slow motion for like 1 second as he jumps off, and then as he starts making his way down, he turns back with all of his buddies, and they're doing the full like Jets and Sharks routine as they walk back up the aisle. It felt unnatural, but at this point, this is the big emotional heart of the movie. I'm like, just do whatever you want to do. Just go crazy with it.
You say he jumps off in slow motion. I would straight up say he jumps off that stage like Spider-Man. His arms are kind of up, his legs are, or actually maybe a better is Trinity from the Matrix. He's sort of got a Trinity from the Matrix kind of pose as he's jumping off.
Yeah, I can see that.
In slow motion. But yeah, basically it does that thing that you get at these types of movies. It's like the end of School of Rock when all the parents are like, you know what, maybe it's been good for our kids that they've had this experience. It cuts over to the dad and he's like, oh my god, my daughter's so good at this. She's like actually really into this. So basically before we have our last little bit of dancing where the movie ends, he comes up and says to Johnny, hey, I was wrong. I found out it wasn't you that got her pregnant and I admit when I'm wrong. And
yep. And he turns to the daughter and says, you look so beautiful up there. Give him a big hug. And now everybody's up and dancing with randomly assorted partners.
Yes, all the oldies have gotten up to dance with the youngs. Except the rich broad that wanted to have sex with him. She just leaves in disgust. Because, he's found someone new. I don't like this. And leaves.
I like the implication that she is like one of the most sexualized characters in this whole movie, and yet when everybody starts doing the new hotness, which is just grinding on each other, she's like, well, now I don't want to anymore.
Yeah. Also, somehow we got to this part of the movie and just skipped over the first night they're there, where Baby ends up being the assistant to the magician on the stage. And
I forgot about that.
Cut in half in the box and all that. It popped into my head and I'm like, how did we not mention that?
Yeah, very first night she's approached, I think, by Neil, and she's like, hey, I got to set up this magic act. You want to come help me? And then smash cut to she's the lady in the box, and she's like, oh, this is awful. And for some reason, the prize for participating in that is a live chicken.
Oh, I forgot that part. Yeah, she walks off the stage with a chicken.
Yeah. What was she supposed to do with the chicken? Even ignoring the fact she's here for a whole week. Like, take it home?
Or was it a turkey? I think I may have thought it was a turkey when but
I'm 95% sure it was a chicken.
You may be right. You may be right. I don't know.
Either way, it was alive, and that's not okay.
Imagine a chicken or a turkey with a bow on its head being carried off stage. That's what's there. But probably the weirdest detail of this whole movie is that one little tidbit. But yeah, there's a lot of, like, I don't think we've quite emphasized how much of the montages are just like random bits of dancing. They spend a lot of time showing her dance on like this sort of walkway that goes up to the stairs where all the staff cabins are. There's a lot of dancing there. There's also a part when he's training her that I want to mention, because this is actually very like Karate Kid-esque. Is they're on like a log in the forest, it's a horizontal log that's sort of over like I don't even know if it's over water, but it's just it's fallen down, so it's like a beam,
a gully.
Yeah, so it's like a tight walk beam style of a log, and they're on their bare feet and they're doing like balancing exercises, and I'm like, this is just straight up like a martial arts movie training moment at this point. So yeah,
I mean, to be fair, there's a bit of crossover there of being able to control your body well enough to do the movements you want. So
yeah, but you didn't get to kick someone in the face at the end of the movie.
To be fair, in the trivia, they continuously say that after they filmed Red Dawn together, Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze hated each other, and it took until probably like halfway through filming of this movie until they finally like got over it. So there might have been a kick that was just edited out.
Maybe a few kicks, perhaps.
Yeah.
Release the kicker cut.
Release the karate cut of
karate
Dirty
cut,
Dancing.
The karate
Clearly
cut.
It must exist.
What a good title. Yeah, I it's so weird talking in depth about a movie like this that I feel so little for. I hope that we've said something vaguely entertaining along the way, because I genuinely don't know how to talk about a movie like this. It's really weird. Like, either I really like what a movie is, so I want to like talk in depth because I care about it and because I want to like sort of break down why it's working for me. Or it's trying to be a movie I like and it's shit, so I can break down why it's a mess. This is in this weird no man's land where I don't know what to really like talk about all that much.
Right.
So, like, it's going to be an interesting 8-episode season. We'll see how it goes. I expect that I will vary levels of misery throughout.
That's fair. I'll mostly enjoy myself. I mean, some of the votes I'm a little bit iffy on, but everything in general I'm cool with. But no, I think the thing about this movie that sets, I don't know about apart, because obviously there's 7 more that I haven't seen.
It's the first one. It's hard to do any comparisons yet.
Yeah, but I think the thing that surprised me the most with this is that it is so... It's surprising in the directions it takes outside of the dancing. Like the fact that there is a character who gets an abortion and they're not like shamed for it. It's not something that is played up of like, oh, well, you can't do this. There's all this stuff. Like, no, it's just a thing that needs to happen for this character and they just do it.
That feels even a little progressive for when it was made, never mind the period that it's set in. Like, I can't imagine that's a conversation that's treated with kindness in 1963.
No, definitely not.
I mean, think of the debates that come up with it now and all the shit we have to put up with politically about it.
Yeah.
So, I don't imagine this being like. I guess it presents a lot of these characters as being relatively kind people that they're treating it with this type of demeanor. So, and
that's the part that I actually really enjoy about it is that I think that the only character I would label as an out and out villain is Robbie, but even then he's a prick. He's totally like the worst. But it's not like he does anything villainous against our protagonists in any way.
No, he's just villainous generally. But I would also throw in the grandson that runs, the Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, I mean, but again, neither of them do anything against Baby or Johnny. Neither of them are.
But like they're not antagonists, right? We're not saying that, but we're saying who are villainous, and those are definitely the ones that spring to mind as falling under that. This is not a movie that has a typical antagonist,
right?
If anything, the antagonist is the father, I guess. Really, if you really want to break it down,
yeah. But even then, because he's such a cool dude, he's so nice about things, it really is just the antagonist is the class structure. It's the thing that's keeping them in place and keeping them apart. And it's interesting in this movie that they didn't entirely like tear it down. They didn't spend time saying like, oh, there's there's the entertainers and there's the guests and they have to remain separate all the time. They more or less just said like, let's not just be so quick to judge each other, Like, let's not be so quick to say that one side are all stuck up pricks and the other side are all low down trash.
Yeah. All right, let's rate it.
Okay. Fair enough.
I got nothing more to add.
No, yeah, that's fine. That's fair. I think, it's always trouble at the beginning of a new season because obviously the rating should be working for the whole show, but I feel like the first one in each season is kind of the stepping off point that I compare everything later to. So for this one, I mean, again, it wasn't like high art. It was very shallow in what it was doing, but it was fun for me. I at least enjoyed myself along the way. And the ending of it really did build up to just a big heartfelt moment where it's a feel-good movie. I don't really have any problem saying that, is that coming out of this, I didn't feel like I wasted my time, but I will say this isn't something that I normally would have seeked out, obviously, since I hadn't seen it before. So all in all, ratings-wise, I think I'm going to give this one... I'll give it a 7.5. It's good. It's not quite in that great territory, but I do think there's a reason that it's regarded as well as it is, and I can see that.
Okay, so I faced with somewhat of a dilemma here, is like, how do I approach rating some of these movies? Because fundamentally, there's obviously, appreciating like sort of more objective or technical merits, and understanding that it functions and it's a achieving what it's mostly setting out to do for the audience that it's aimed for. And then there's also just like personal enjoyment to factor into it. And I can't just ignore that side of it. I think it would be disingenuous, and it would, if I did ignore that, then it would be rated too high relative to what I've rated other movies. So
that's fair.
I think for me, this one, it functions well enough. It's got some memorable music. It clearly sets up and pays off most of the things that it wants to do and it's got a couple of surprising story beats, a couple of well acted scenes. But I did, not find the actual dancing all that engaging for me. The romance felt a little bit flat from my perspective. So I think for me, I'm going to give this a nice. I'm going to sort of establish what the scale is here.
Okay.
And I'm going to say this is a 6.
Okay. That's fine. If you went under a 5, I'd have complaints.
No. I'm
6...
not delusional. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not. Anyway, as for does it make the cut? The cut. Does it make the collection? I think this is it's going to be a tough season to gauge this on.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to say for me, no, it doesn't. I don't see any reasons why I would ever want to watch this again. Now, I can see a scenario in which I'm made to watch it again, but I cannot see a scenario in which I would want to choose to watch it again.
Patrick Swayze series, we're doing it again.
No.
No, I can't in good conscience put it in cut from the collection. I will make the pass of saying cutting it close, but honestly, I would put it in a low grade, but still making the cut. I think that it is. Even if you ignore whether or not you like dancing movies that much, I think it's enough of like just movie history in its own right, where it does have these iconic moments to it, that it's worth considering it in that regard. But I'm willing to come down to cutting it close because I know that it is not your cup of tea.
Cutting it close it is then.
All right.
Not going any higher than that. Hey, but the point is here is that if we do hit a movie or two this season where I do want to put it in the collection, that means more, because I'm not just giving in because you go, oh, please don't put Dirty Dancing in the corner, Peter. No, it goes in the corner, okay?
Look, I don't know about you, but I had the time of my life. And I owe none of it to you.
Very good. Yeah, there you go. Dirty Dancing. I don't know how this season is going to go. Even just looking at the movies coming up, I have seen 2 out of the remaining 7. Well, it depends on the votes, I suppose, but I don't think I've seen any of those, to be honest, either. So I think it is just 2 out of 7.
I've seen a few of the votes. In terms of what we actually have scheduled, I haven't seen any of the upcoming ones, so they're all going to be fresh to me.
I tell a lie. I have seen 1 out of the second vote.
Okay.
I've seen one of those.
Hopefully that one won't get voted for, so we can get some new content here.
Which is why I'm not telling them what it is. They can imagine it themselves. So yeah, well stuff. So I did say earlier that there's bonus shows over in Patreon, worth mentioning. We do 2 bonus shows every month. There's more bonus shows than that actually for other shows, but specifically stuff that me and David do together. We have the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection. We just did a fantastic German film called Revanche on there, but we do stuff like Akira Kurosawa movies, we do Ingmar Bergman movies, we do classics, foreign films, all that kind of thing. One of my favorite things to do every month, because we actually just get to do something that's probably very good on a regular basis. The other show we do monthly on Patreon is Extra Reels, and that is where we do the opposite. It's the worst films ever made. And we have recently done such gems as Mac and Me and Troll 2 to give you a sense of what might be in there. Although, to be honest, those are 2 more famous movies.
I was going to say, you listed off the 2 that we could actually put on the poster. Everything else is like, you've never heard of this horrible film.
Well, Miami Connection, Deadly Prey, Dangerous Men, some real gems. And I've got some ideas for the future of Extra Reels that I'm sure is going to go well. So,
well, I look forward to whatever host you can Shanghai into that.
Sorry, David, you're locked in. There's no escape.
Dang it.
But yes, so check out that, and of course check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment, the other movie podcast that we do most weeks, which is a sci-fi movie podcast. We have been doing some of the Apes movies because we got a new one of those coming up soon. Same with the Mad Max movies, plus some other great things sort of sprinkled in. But that's on the same YouTube channel. Of course, this and that have their own podcast feed. So, you know, go check out. But, okay, that's my plugging done. Thank you for watching, everyone. We appreciate it. Keep watching movies. Keep dancing. And so if you can get it, it's always nice to have... Oh, is there a pun? Is there a pun I can make? Diegetic immunity. No, that's not...